I still remember the first morning I walked into the building as if it were yesterday. The glass doors opened with a soft hush, the kind that made me feel like I was entering another world. My hands were clammy, my heart racing with that familiar cocktail of nerves and excitement that comes with starting a new job. At 30, I had already shifted between positions a few times, chasing opportunities and trying to prove myself. But this one felt different. This was a bigger company, a place where careers were built, not just jobs filled. I straightened my tie, took a deep breath, and told myself to stay composed. But the moment I stepped into the office and caught sight of him, all composure evaporated. He was standing near the conference table, talking to a group of managers, his presence commanding without ever seeming forced. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair neatly styled and just a hint of gray at the temples. It wasn't just his looks that struck me, though God knows they did. It was the way he carried himself, the calm authority in his stance, the warmth in his voice that somehow made everyone lean in closer. He didn't have to demand attention. He simply had it. That was my boss. The nameplate on the wall outside his office had already told me who he was. But names and titles don't prepare you for the way someone makes you feel. I told myself to focus, to not let the sudden flutter in my chest mean anything, but the truth slipped in like sunlight through blinds. I was drawn to him. As the orientation began, I tried to listen to the HR manager explaining policies and procedures, but my eyes betrayed me, wandering back to him whenever he crossed a room or exchanged a quick word with someone. He laughed at one point, low, genuine, the kind of laugh that made other people smile even if they hadn't heard the joke. My stomach tightened. "Stop it, Ryan," I scolded myself. "You can't start your first day like this." But crushes don't ask for permission. They just arrive, uninvited and persistent. Later, when we were introduced, I extended my hand, praying it wouldn't tremble. "Welcome aboard, Ryan," he said, his grip firm but not overpowering. His eyes held mine for a second longer than necessary, or maybe that was just my hopeful imagination. "I've heard good things from your previous references. I think you'll fit in well here." I managed a polite smile, the professional kind, though inside my pulse was unsteady. "Thank you, sir. I'm eager to learn and do my best." His lips curved, not a full smile, but enough to soften his otherwise serious expression. Good. That's exactly the attitude I like to see. The rest of the day blurred with introductions to colleagues, a tour of the building, and paperwork, but his presence lingered like a subtle fragrance in the air. Every time he walked past my desk or spoke across the room, my chest stirred. I knew I should be focused on the task ahead, but I couldn't help it. There was something magnetic about him. What struck me most was how he motivated people. He didn't just bark orders or hide behind authority. When someone stumbled in their presentation during the morning meeting, instead of scolding, he stepped in with a gentle redirect, framing the mistake as an opportunity to explore a different angle. The nervous employee's shoulders straightened, their confidence restored, and I thought to myself, this is a man who builds people, not breaks them. That night, I lay in bed replaying the day. I told myself it was just admiration, that it was natural to look up to someone accomplished, someone in a position of power. But the truth whispered in the dark. Admiration doesn't make your heartbeat stumble when he shakes your hand. Admiration doesn't make you notice the faint line of stubble on his jaw or the way his shirt fits perfectly across his chest. And yet, I also knew I had to keep it buried. He was my boss. This was work. Letting my heart wander in that direction was reckless, dangerous even. So I tried to seal it away, promising myself I'd be professional. But then came the moment that cracked my resolve, just a little. It was late in the afternoon, after most people had cleared out for a quick coffee break. I was still at my desk, fumbling through a complicated spreadsheet, frustration creeping in. He passed by, noticed my struggle, and paused. "You're new, so don't put pressure on yourself to have everything perfect on day one," he said gently. He leaned closer, pointing at the screen. His shoulder brushed mine for the briefest instant. "See here? You just need to adjust the formula. Easy fix." His voice was low, steady, reassuring, but all I could focus on was the warmth of that accidental touch. It was nothing, completely normal in the context of work. Yet to me, It was as though the air had shifted, charged with something unsaid. I swallowed, nodded, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. "Thank you, sir. I'll remember that." "Good," he said with that same small, almost secret smile before walking away. I sat there, staring at the numbers on the screen, but all I could see was the kindness in his eyes, the quiet encouragement in his tone. For him, it was probably nothing. For me, it was everything. The seed of something I couldn't name yet, but already feared would grow. The weeks that followed moved faster than I expected. New routines carved themselves into my life. Morning commutes, endless emails, meetings that stretched longer than the agenda promised. But what stood out most weren't the tasks themselves. It was him. Always him. I learned quickly that working under him meant being both challenged and supported in equal measure. He didn't let me take shortcuts, but he also never left me stranded. On one project, I miscalculated a set of financial projections. It wasn't catastrophic, but I knew it wasn't my best work. When I presented it, my nerves betrayed me, and I braced for disappointment. Instead, he tilted his head thoughtfully, studying the numbers, then looked at me with a calm expression. "You've got the right structure. Ryan, just refine the assumptions, and it'll be solid. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Be afraid of not learning from them." The room had been full of senior colleagues, people who intimidated me with their sharp suits and sharper words. Yet in that moment, his steady tone lifted me, made me believe I could correct the error and move forward without shame. And I did. I stayed late that night reworking the calculations, and when I submitted the revised report, he sent me a short email that I must have read a dozen times. "Good work, Ryan. Proud of the improvement." It was ridiculous how much a single sentence could mean. Day by day, our interactions became little threads woven into my memory. He had a habit of standing close when reviewing documents, leaning over my desk with one hand braced on the surface. Sometimes his sleeve would brush mine, and the faint scent of his cologne, clean, understated, yet undeniably masculine, would linger after he walked away. I told myself not to read into it, that he probably stood that close to everyone. Still, each time my chest tightened, a quiet war broke out inside me. One afternoon, during a particularly stressful project, I sat hunched at my desk, eyes burning from staring at the screen. He appeared at my side without warning, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "Take a break, Ryan," he said softly. "You'll solve this faster with a clear head." The warmth of his touch spread through me, steadying and unsteadying at the same time. My throat felt dry. "Right. I'll get some water." He gave my shoulder the faintest squeeze before pulling his hand back. A simple gesture. Nothing unusual between a supportive boss and his team. But to me, it felt like a quiet storm I was hiding from the world. At night, my mind refused to let go. I would lie awake imagining conversations that had never happened, replaying the curve of his smile, the weight of his gaze when it lingered on me a second too long. Or was I only imagining it? In my dreams, the line between professional courtesy and something more blurred until I woke breathless, heart pounding with a mix of guilt and yearning. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe he was just naturally encouraging, a leader who understood the value of kindness. Maybe I was projecting emotions onto gestures that were innocent. I clung to those rationalizations during the day, but when the office lights dimmed and I was alone with my thoughts, the truth pressed in. I wanted him, not just as a mentor or guide, but as something I couldn't even dare to name aloud. So I started writing. At night, when silence stretched too wide and my chest felt too full, I opened a leather-bound journal I'd never used before. Page after page, I poured out words I couldn't say to anyone else. I wrote about the way his voice steadied me, how his approval made me feel seen, how every glance carried a weight that left me restless. I confessed the things I couldn't admit to him, or even to myself during the day. "If only you knew," I wrote one evening. "If only you could see how your smallest gestures carve themselves into me. A hand on my shoulder and I'm undone. A smile across the table and I'm burning. I wish I could tell you that I felt this since the first day, that your presence fills the spaces of my thoughts. But I can't. Not now. Not yet." The journal became my secret confession booth, a place to release the tension of carrying a desire I didn't know what to do with. Meanwhile, at work, his encouragement only deepened my conflict. During a major team meeting, he singled me out for praise, commending my initiative on a project that had been giving us all headaches. "Ryan has been instrumental in getting us through this hurdle," he said, looking directly at me. My colleagues turned their heads, some nodding, others politely clapping, but I could hardly hear them. My ears were filled with the sound of my own pulse. I smiled, gave the expected professional nod, but inside it was chaos. Was this how he treated everyone? Or was there something beneath his gaze that hinted at more? The uncertainty gnawed at me. I wanted to believe, but fear of being wrong, of misreading kindness for something deeper, kept me silent. For now, I told myself, it was safer this way, admiring from a distance, capturing my feelings in ink on hidden pages, and pretending during the day that everything was perfectly, painfully normal. Yet every time his shoulder brushed mine, every time his hand lingered just a second too long, the fragile wall I had built inside me cracked a little more. The office had a strange stillness at night. By the time most people cleared out, the open floor felt like an entirely different world. Rows of dark monitors, faint hum of the air conditioning, the city lights glimmering through the tall glass windows. That evening, I found myself hunched over my desk long after everyone else had gone, the glow of the screen the only company I had. The report in front of me was stubborn, figures refusing to line up the way they should. I rubbed at my temples, fatigue weighing heavy on my shoulders, when I heard footsteps behind me. "You're still here," came his voice, warm but tinged with surprise. I turned, and there he was, jacket draped over one arm, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked less like the commanding leader I was used to and more like a man at ease, though the sight of him still carried the same impact. "Yes, sir," I said quickly, trying to sound casual. "I just want to finish this report before tomorrow's review. It's giving me some trouble." He set his jacket over a nearby chair and stepped closer. "Let me take a look." My pulse jumped. "Oh, I don't want to keep you. It's late." He gave a small, amused smile. "If you're staying, I'm not going to leave you stranded. Besides, I've been meaning to check this section myself." Before I could protest further, he pulled a chair next to mine and sat down. Suddenly, he was close, closer than usual. The faint scent of his cologne wrapped around me, familiar now but never less intoxicating. His arm brushed mine as he leaned toward the screen, his voice low and calm as he walked me through the steps. "See here," he said, pointing at a formula cell. His hand moved so near mine that the heat of his skin seemed to radiate across the narrow space. "You've structured it correctly, but the reference is looping back on itself. Try adjusting it like this." I typed where he indicated, my fingers stiff from the awareness of him beside me. The correction worked, the numbers aligning neatly across the rows. Relief flickered, but it was drowned out by the thunder of my heartbeat. "Better," he said softly, leaning back a little. His shoulder grazed mine in the movement. Not by accident this time, or at least it didn't feel like it. I should have shifted away. I should have reasserted the professional distance between us. But I didn't. I couldn't. My hand lingered on the mouse, and then, in a moment that seemed almost unreal, the back of his hand brushed against mine. It was nothing more than a touch, the faintest graze of skin. But neither of us moved. The contact stretched, a silence wrapping around us heavier than any words. My breath caught, chest tightening as warmth flooded through me. I glanced sideways, expecting to pull back, to laugh it off, to remind me where we stood. Instead, his eyes met mine. There was no reprimand, no shock, only softness, a quiet searching, as though he was asking a question without speaking. My throat went dry. I didn't move. I didn't want to. The world outside, the deadlines, the office rules, the unspoken lines we weren't supposed to cross, faded until it was only this. His hand against mine, his steady gaze, the ache in my chest that I could no longer deny. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes. My skin tingled where we touched, every nerve awake. I felt both exposed and sheltered at once, as though in that fragile moment he could see all the words I had written in my secret journal without my ever saying them aloud. Finally he spoke, voice low, almost hesitant. "You've been working hard, Ryan." I notice it, more than you think. The sincerity in his tone pierced deeper than the compliment itself. I swallowed hard, unsure if my voice would even hold. Thank you. It means more than you know. His lips curved in that small, quiet smile I had come to recognize. Good. Then keep believing it. He didn't pull his hand away immediately. The touch lingered a moment longer, as if both of us were afraid that breaking it would shatter something delicate and unnamed. When he finally did, it was slow, almost reluctant, his fingers trailing slightly before withdrawing. The air between us was thick, charged. He turned his attention back to the screen, guiding me through the final adjustments to the report, but everything felt different now. Every word he spoke, every shift of his body beside mine, carried an unspoken weight. I nodded at his explanations, forcing myself to focus. But the truth was, my thoughts were nowhere near the numbers. When we finished, he closed the file and leaned back in his chair. There, it's solid now. You did well. I managed a faint smile, though my insides were trembling, only because you helped. He looked at me for a long moment, and for the first time, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes that mirrored the storm inside me. Something beyond professionalism. Something he wasn't yet ready to name, just as I wasn't. As he stood and gathered his jacket, he spoke again, softer this time. Don't overwork yourself, Ryan. You're too valuable for that. I sat frozen as he walked away, his footsteps fading into the quiet. The report was finished, but my thoughts were only beginning to unravel. I stared at the screen long after he left, replaying the brush of his hand against mine, the warmth of his gaze, the silence that had spoken more than words ever could. I knew, deep down, that something had shifted between us. It was subtle, fragile, unnamed, but it was real, and once felt, it could never be forgotten. The night of the report lingered with me long after the office lights had gone out. That single touch, so brief and simple on the surface, became a weight in my chest that refused to fade. Every time I sat at my desk, every time I saw him cross the floor, it was there between us, unspoken but alive. I tried to carry on as though nothing had changed, but it had. My journal became heavy with words I couldn't say aloud, lines blurring between gratitude and longing, admiration and desire. The tension grew unbearable, a constant storm inside me. And one evening, when the office had emptied and I once again found myself alone with him, the dam finally broke. He had called me into his office to review a draft presentation. The blinds were half drawn, the glow of the city spilling in through the windows. Papers were spread across his desk, but I could hardly focus. Every word he spoke seemed layered with something unsaid, every glance brushing against a fragile thread between us. When the silence stretched, I felt my chest tighten. I couldn't keep it in anymore. My hands trembled slightly as I set the papers down, forcing myself to meet his eyes. I need to tell you something, I said, my voice low but steady. He paused, leaning back in his chair, studying me with the kind of patience that always made me feel both exposed and safe. Go on. I drew a breath, the air thick in my lungs. From the first day I met you, I admired you, not just as a boss. More than that, I've tried to bury it, to convince myself it's just respect. But it's not. It's more than that. The words trembled as they left me, but the relief of saying them was overwhelming. My heart raced, waiting for the world to collapse around me. The room went still. He didn't answer right away. His eyes held mine, unreadable, and in that silence, dread clawed at me. Had I ruined everything? Finally, he exhaled, leaning forward slightly. Ryan, his tone was careful, but softer than I expected. You think I haven't felt something too? My breath caught. You what? He looked away briefly, almost as if gathering courage, then back at me. From the beginning, there was something about you, the way you carry yourself, the way you throw yourself into your work. It pulled me in, but I'm your boss. There are lines, boundaries, professional ethics. I kept telling myself it wasn't right, that I couldn't let myself feel it. Hearing him admit it, the very thing I had been battling alone, was like having the ground shift beneath me. My chest ached with relief and disbelief all at once. So it wasn't just me? No, he said firmly, his gaze unwavering now. "It's never been just you." The heaviness in the room deepened, not with dread anymore, but with the weight of truths finally spoken. I swallowed, my throat tight. I was afraid. Afraid you'd think I was unprofessional, or worse, that you'd look at me differently. I didn't want to lose this job, or lose your respect. His expression softened. "I respect you more for your honesty." And yes, I was afraid too. We're men in a workplace that doesn't exactly welcome this kind of connection. People judge. Whispers spread. It's a risk for both of us. I nodded, my hands twisting together. But ignoring it, it's like trying to breathe underwater. I can't pretend anymore. Not when every time you look at me, I feel like you see more than anyone else ever has. Something flickered in his eyes then, something unguarded, almost tender. He rose from his chair slowly and came around the desk, stopping just a step away from me. The space between us felt electric, fragile, alive. "You have no idea how many times I wanted to say the same," he murmured. But I kept stopping myself, because I thought it would hurt you more than help. I didn't want to put you in that position. My breath shook as I looked up at him. "You already did. But it's not hurt. It's hope. It's the only thing that's kept me going." For a moment, neither of us moved. The air hummed with everything unspoken, and then, as though the decision was made silently between us, he reached out. His hand cupped the side of my face gently, hesitantly, as if waiting for me to pull away. I didn't. My eyes fluttered closed as he leaned in, and then his lips brushed mine. It wasn't urgent or reckless. It was careful, deliberate, the kiss of someone who knew the fragility of the moment and wanted to honor it. The warmth of it spread through me, a flood of emotion I had kept locked away finally finding release. When we parted, just enough to breathe, I opened my eyes to find him watching me, vulnerability clear in his expression. "We'll have to be careful," he said quietly, "for both our sakes. But I don't want to keep pretending." Neither did I. "I don't need promises of forever," I whispered. "I just want honesty. Whatever this is, I'd rather explore it carefully than deny it completely." His thumb brushed my cheek, a tender gesture that made my chest ache. "Then that's what we'll do. Carefully, respectfully, but honestly." I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips despite the weight of it all. "That's enough for me." We stood there a little longer, the world outside forgotten, the city lights casting faint patterns across the walls. Nothing explicit passed between us. Only the quiet power of two men finally admitting what had lived between them all along. When I left his office that night, my heart was lighter than it had been in weeks. The fear was still there. The fear of judgment, of what might happen if anyone found out, but it was tempered by something stronger. The knowledge that it wasn't just me anymore, that he had felt it too, and that, together, we had taken the first step into something neither of us could ignore. The days that followed our confession felt like I had stepped into a new chapter of life, one where the world looked the same, but everything inside me had changed. I still came into the office every morning like before, nodding politely to colleagues, taking my seat, and diving into work. But beneath that ordinary routine, a secret warmth lived inside me, a warmth that came from knowing my boss, Daniel, the man I admired since day one, was now more than just my boss. He was quietly, impossibly mine. We didn't rush into anything reckless. Both of us understood the stakes. We were men working in a professional environment where appearances mattered. Yet, we also couldn't deny what had blossomed between us. So, we built our connection in small, almost invisible ways. It started with coffee. One morning, Daniel left a cup on my desk before anyone else had arrived. No note, no words, just a quiet gesture. When I looked up at him across the room, he gave me the faintest smile, the kind only I would recognize. That tiny moment carried me through the entire day. After that, we found little excuses to share time together outside of work. A quick meeting at the cafe down the street turned into a lingering conversation over pastries, our hands almost brushing as we reached for sugar. Sometimes he would walk me to the parking lot at night, standing a little too close, his voice softer than usual, as if those moments belonged only to us. I lived for those glimpses of something more. His laugh when I told him stories about my family. The way his eyes softened whenever I got nervous during a presentation, and he jumped in to back me up. At times, it felt unreal, like I was trapped in a dream where every detail sparkled with meaning. But secrecy was a heavy thing to carry. At work, Daniel kept his professionalism intact. He treated me no differently than anyone else in meetings. If anything, he was stricter, making sure no one could ever suspect favoritism. To others, I was just another employee under his leadership. But in those stolen moments, our glances across the room, our quiet exchanges in hallways, I knew better. The hardest part was containing my emotions. When he stood behind me during a project review, leaning close to point something out on the screen, every nerve in me screamed to turn and meet his lips. When he praised my work in front of the team, I wanted to shout to the world that this man wasn't just my mentor, he was my heart. But I couldn't. Not yet. And then came the rumors. It started as whispers I overheard near the break room. Someone joked about how much time I spent in Daniel's office. Another muttered something about special treatment. At first, I brushed it off. Offices are full of gossip. It was nothing unusual. But the words found their way into my head late at night, replaying until they gnawed at my peace. One afternoon, as we sat across from each other at a cafe table tucked into a corner, I let my fears spill out. What do they find out? I asked, voice lower than a whisper. What if people think I'm only where I am because of you? Daniel set his cup down, his expression serious but not shaken. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine in a gesture small enough to be missed by anyone passing by. Ryan, he said softly, you're here because of your own talent. You've worked harder than most. Don't let gossip make you doubt yourself. I searched his face, needing more than just reassurance. I needed to know he wouldn't regret us. But what if it gets worse? What if someone sees? He squeezed my hand lightly, his calmness wrapping around me like a shield. Then we deal with it together. I won't let fear define us. The truth is, I've never been this happy in my life. And that happiness isn't something I'll trade for other people's opinions. Those words sank deep into me, anchoring me. I realized then that while rumors could be cruel, they couldn't touch the bond we had built. The bond we were still carefully shaping day by day. After that conversation, I felt braver. At work, I kept my professionalism intact, but inside, I carried his words like armor. We still kept our affection private, but the secrecy no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a choice, one we made together until we were ready for more. Even simple moments grew brighter. Once, during a team lunch, Daniel sat across from me. Our eyes met in the middle of the table. And though we spoke to others, there was an entire silent conversation happening between us. Later, when everyone left, he brushed past me, murmuring just one word. Tonight. That word kept me smiling for hours, my heart racing with anticipation. At night, when we were finally away from the office, we could breathe freely. Sometimes we went for drives with no destination, the city lights flickering across his face while he told me stories from his past. Other times, we stayed in, cooking together, our laughter filling the quiet space as if it had always belonged to us. In those moments, I realized how love reshaped everything. Work was no longer just work. It was a place where I could see him daily, where I could admire him even from afar. Life was no longer a series of routines. It was a journey colored by his presence. And though challenges hovered like shadows, rumors, fears, the constant pressure of secrecy, I found strength I never knew I had. Because now, I wasn't just walking through life alone. I had someone beside me, someone who believed in me, someone who, against every odd and expectation, chose me. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost too perfect. Every day at work was balanced carefully on the edge of professionalism. Every evening held the secret joy of being with Daniel. It was like living two lives, one outwardly calm, one burning with quiet passion. I thought we could keep it that way forever. But life, I've learned, doesn't let happiness remain untested. It began with a meeting I wasn't supposed to attend. Daniel had been called upstairs to speak with the board. He came back later than usual, his face composed, but there was something in his eyes, a heaviness he tried to hide. I knew him well enough by then to notice. That night, when we finally sat together in his apartment, he told me, "They've offered me a transfer," he said slowly, carefully, as though each word was fragile glass. "A major promotion. Lead director. But it's not here. It's abroad." The room fell silent. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the muted sounds of the city outside. But inside me, everything was chaos. Abroad. The word echoed in my head like a warning. Abroad meant gone. Abroad meant distance, time zones, silence where his laughter used to be. Abroad meant the fragile balance we had built would shatter. My throat tightened when I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. "In a few months, if I accept." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped tightly. He looked like a man standing at a crossroads, torn between two roads that could not meet. I tried to be calm, but the fear was too raw. "So, what are you going to do?" He looked at me then, and for the first time in months, there was doubt in his eyes. Daniel, the man who always had answers, who always carried himself with certainty, looked like someone lost. "That's what I don't know, Ryan. It's everything I've worked for. Years of effort, recognition, stability. But if I take it," his voice faltered, "if I take it, I lose this. I lose us." The words hit me like a storm. My chest ached. I had never wanted to be the reason he sacrificed his dreams. Yet the thought of him leaving, of waking up and not seeing him across from me, was unbearable. "I don't want to stand in your way," I whispered, though the lie stung. "You've worked for this. You deserve it." His hand reached for mine, gripping it firmly, almost desperately. "And what about what I deserve here? What about the happiness I've found with you? Do you think I could walk away from that so easily?" Tears burned at the edges of my eyes, but I blinked them away. "But what if you regret it later? What if you wake up one day and wonder if choosing me over your career was a mistake?" He shook his head, his grip on my hand tightening. "Ryan, listen to me. Titles, promotions, recognition, those things don't hold me at night. They don't make me laugh when the world feels heavy. They don't make my heart race every time I walk into a room. You do." I swallowed hard, his words breaking through every wall I had built. "But this is your dream," I said, voice trembling. His expression softened, and he brushed a thumb across the back of my hand. "Dreams change. Once, my dream was climbing as high as I could, proving myself to the world. But now my dream is simpler. It's being with the person I love, building a life together without fear. If I have that, I have more than any title could ever give me." My breath caught. He had never said it so openly before. Love. But there it was, raw and unshakable. I felt my composure crumble. "You'd really stay? For me?" "For us," he corrected gently. "This isn't about choosing you over my career. It's about choosing the life I know will make me happiest. And that life is here with you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I could only stare at him, overwhelmed by the weight of his decision. My heart swelled with something I hadn't known I was missing all my life, being chosen completely, without hesitation. I finally leaned forward, pressing my forehead against his, closing the distance between us. "I don't know what I did to deserve this," I whispered. He smiled softly, his breath mingling with mine. "You didn't have to do anything. You just had to be you." And in that quiet space, with the city lights glowing faintly through window, I realized that love wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices. It was about choice. And Daniel had chosen me. That truth, more than anything, made me believe in us, even against the odds. Months passed, and with them, the fear that once shadowed us began to fade. At first, Daniel and I tried to keep our relationship quiet, just as we always had. But love, I realized, has a way of making itself visible, no matter how carefully you try to hide it. A glance too long at a meeting, a smile too soft in the hallway. People noticed, the rumors returned, but this time we didn't run from them. Daniel, true to his promise, stood tall beside me. When a colleague made a sly comment one afternoon, he didn't look away. Instead, he answered calmly, Ryan is one of the most hardworking people here, and I'm proud to have him by my side in more ways than one. The room fell silent, and for a moment, I thought my heart would stop. But instead of scandal, something else happened. A few heads nodded. A few quiet smiles appeared. Not everyone approved, of course, but not everyone mattered. Slowly, the weight of secrecy lifted. It wasn't easy. There were whispers we couldn't silence, looks we couldn't control. But there were also small gestures of quiet support, an encouraging pat on the back from a coworker, a kind word slipped my way when no one else was listening. It was enough. Through it all, I found myself reflecting on where it had begun. The nervous young man on his first day, captivated by his boss's aura, hiding feelings in the margins of a journal. He felt like someone else now. I had spent so much time convincing myself that what I felt was impossible. Yet here I was, living the very dream I never dared to hope for. Daniel, and I built a rhythm outside the office, too. Dinner dates that didn't need to be secret anymore. Walks in the park, where we didn't flinch if our hands brushed. Evenings where we could laugh freely, without the constant fear of being seen. For the first time, love felt light. One evening, months after Daniel had turned down the transfer, we walked together through the city. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The streets buzzed with people heading home. But for me, the world had narrowed to the warmth of his hand in mine. As we walked, I realized how extraordinary the ordinary had become. No longer hiding glances, no longer pulling away in public. We were simply two men in love, unashamed and unafraid. The simple act of walking hand in hand felt like victory. I glanced at him, at the man who had once been just my boss but had become my partner, my anchor, my choice. His smile caught the last of the sunlight, and I thought about everything we'd overcome, fear, doubt, the weight of judgment. All of it had led us here, to this moment of peace. I still can't believe it, I murmured, half to myself. Believe it, he said, tightening his grip on my hand, because this is just the beginning. And in that moment, I knew he was right. What had started as a silent crush, hidden in the quiet corners of my heart, had become a love stronger than I ever imagined. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but it would be ours. Together, we walked on, hand in hand, into a future that felt wide open, carried with us the certainty that love, real love, was worth every risk we had taken to reach it.